Bleach inspired the next generation of anime, and let me explain why. It wasn't just another shounen, it was raw, stylish, and emotional. A story that blended the supernatural with the spiritual, wrapped in sword clashes, slick pacing, and tragic flashbacks. And when Bleach first hit the pages of Weekly Shonen Jump in 2001, it didn't just arrive, it exploded, and its impact is still echoing through modern anime today. But, over time, Bleach's name got clouded. It became the least respected of the big three. People mocked its pacing, pointed to the filler arcs, and said it never lived up to its early promise. And yet, something strange happened. Even while it faded from the center stage, its influence never stopped echoing, because in the years after Bleach, a new wave of anime exploded, with Jujutsu Kaisen and Demon Slayer leading the charge. They weren't continuations of Bleach, but they weren't rip-offs either. They carried something unmistakable, a spiritual torch, a piece of Bleach's soul. JJK with its sleek fights, cursed spirits, domain expansions, and a main character who never asked to be special, and Demon Slayer with its emotional flashbacks, relentless tragedy, clean aesthetic, and sword-based squads, operating in the shadows of society. Their creators have also openly praised tight Kubo, but the influence of Bleach goes deeper than words. You can see it in the structure, you can feel it in the themes, and you can hear it in the silence between punches, in the weight of what isn't said. So this video is about that legacy, about how Bleach became a blueprint and how its spirit shaped the next generation, and how Jujutsu Kaisen and Demon Slayer in their own unique ways continue to carry that torch. And without further ado, let's get right into the video. Before we can understand how Bleach inspired the next generation of anime, we need to talk about what made Bleach special in the first place. Because when it debuted in 2001, Bleach didn't just arrive, it exploded onto the scene, blending style, substance, and spiritual stakes in a way that felt entirely new. Bleach did an excellent job fusing Japanese youth culture with supernatural battles in the afterlife. It had a world where high school drama could seamlessly transition into soul reapers and sword fights. And this duality alone made Bleach feel unique, but its true influence ran even deeper. For one, Bleach redefined the idea of a power-up with bankai. It wasn't just about leveling up, it was about revelation. Every bankai was a psychological mirror, a reflection of the user's soul and identity. Power wasn't handed out arbitrarily. It had to be earned, unlocked, and understood. It made every battle feel like a character study. And then there was Ichigo, a protagonist haunted not just by tragedy but by his own inner hollow. A dark double that was as much a threat as it was a source of strength. These internal conflicts weren't just metaphors, they were battles that played out on the page. Even Bleach's villains had layers. Aizen wasn't just a bad guy, he was magnetic, enigmatic, and terrifyingly calm. The Espada as well, they were more than just strong enemies, often being deeply tragic and philosophical in their ideals. Bleach didn't paint its antagonists in black and white, but it did it in grays, making their defeats feel just a little bit heartbreaking. And let's not forget Kubo's style with minimalist and elegant paneling, combined with sharp dialogue that made even the simpler moments feel like more than just exposition. And I could go on and on, the use of negative space, the striking character silhouettes, even the way Bleach paced its fights. All of this together, the style, power systems, inner battles, and poetic antagonists formed a blueprint. A feeling that whether consciously or not bled into the works of those who came after. A generation of creators who weren't just inspired by Bleach's plot points but by the vibe Bleach gave off. That's exactly what made Bleach so influential, not just what it said but how it made you feel. And so in the next two sections we'll see exactly how that blueprint passed on to the likes of Jujutsu Kaisen and Demon Slayer. If there's one modern anime that carries Bleach's spiritual torch the loudest and proudest, it's Jujutsu Kaisen. From the very beginning, Gege Akutami hasn't hidden his admiration. In a 2021 interview with none other than Tite Kubo himself, Akutami openly said that Bleach taught him how to manage large casts and how to retire characters at the peak of their arc. Which, if you think about it, is such a specific and reverent nod to how Kubo handled the likes of Gin and Ulquiorra in their prime. And Gege's admiration goes even deeper. As a student, he made an entire tribute poetry book inspired by Bleach, showing just how deep his love for the story goes. And we'll see the hints of Bleach DNA everywhere around the world of Jujutsu Kaisen. To start off, the world structure in Jujutsu Kaisen is almost a mirrored echo of Bleach. The Jujutsu Society functions just like the Soul Society, an elite hierarchical organization that exists in secret, purging supernatural threats invisible to the everyday public. In Bleach we had hollows, in JJK we have curses. And the power system, that might be the clearest link of them all. Domain expansions are a modern day bankai, but not in a shallow power-up way. Like bankai, domain expansions reflect the user's soul, their philosophy, and their true self. Each one is an extension of their identity, not just ability. That deep connection between who you are and how you fight. That started with Kubo and was refined by Akutami. Then there's the protagonist. Yuji Itadori doesn't just host a demon, he shares his body with one. Sukuna's presence is chaotic, menacing, and at times tempting. And this to a small extent echoes Ichigo and his inner hollow. The duality, the psychological warfare, the sense that your greatest enemy might not be in front of you but inside of you. And this internal struggle, it's not just a gimmick, it's a storytelling engine. tension. It forces growth, fear, trauma, and resilience. But Bleach's influence doesn't stop at structure or systems, it lives in the way Jujutsu Kaisen feels. The sharp silhouettes, the dialogue, the mid-fight conversations that veer into existential, even poetic territory. And of course, there's the villains as well. Bleach gave us Aizen and the Espada, beautifully dressed agents of despair, charismatic, dangerous, and complex. And JJK does the same with Sukuna, Mahito, and Kenjaku. These aren't just bad guys, they're commentaries on cruelty, fate, and the human condition. Akutami, like Kubo, asks questions through his antagonists, and often they're not questions with easy answers. But don't get me wrong here, JJK isn't just a Bleach 2.0, it's more of a spiritual successor, a series that takes everything Kubo pioneered, honors it, and reinterprets it for a new generation. It's not a copy and paste of Bleach, it's more like a continuation of its legacy. And next we have Demon Slayer, which is less overtly inspired by Bleach than Jujutsu Kaisen. However, the mangaka of Demon Slayer has still named Bleach as a key influence, and you can feel that influence not on the surface but in the bones of the story, being deeply woven into the narrative. Let's start with the Hashira, for example, the highest ranking demon slayers. They serve a similar function to Bleach's Gotei 13 captains. They're elite, they're emotionally complex, and their fighting styles are a direct reflection of their personalities. In Bleach, every captain Zanpakuto is unique, a sword with a name, a spirit, a form that's theirs alone. And in Demon Slayer, the breathing techniques are just as personalized. Water, flame, insect, sound. Each breath style isn't just a way to fight, it's an identity, a philosophy, and a story. These are more than just powers, they're expressions, and they're the first of many similarities between Demon Slayer and Bleach. Next is the enemy hierarchy, and here the parallels get sharper. Muzan Kibutsuchi leads the 12 Kizuki, a secretive centralized structure of elite demons, and Aizen in Bleach leads the Espada, former hollows granted vast power. Both leaders are charismatic figures who aren't just seeking dominance, they're trying to transcend reality itself. Muzan wants immortality while Aizen wants divinity. Both are obsessed with overcoming the limits of their worlds. Even the structural breakdown is similar, upper and lower moons in Demon Slayer and Espada and their numbered ranks in Bleach. But the real connection isn't just in the format, it's in the themes. Both villains are lonely at the top, their strength isolates them, their ambition alienates them. And through them, both stories explore a painful truth. The higher you climb, the emptier it gets. Speaking of the villains, one of Bleach's most memorable twists was reframing its monsters. The Hollows were former humans, souls who lost their way, victims of grief, regret, and rage. Kubo believed that villains are a product of pain, and Demon Slayer takes that exact belief to heart. Every major demon that Tanjiro defeats is given a story, a reason, a memory, something that makes us pause and feel before the final blow lands. The show doesn't just mourn the dead, it honors them. We see their childhoods, their regrets, and their last thoughts. Even in battle, Tanjiro grieves, he kills but never with hate. And that level of empathy echoes Kubo's storytelling. So while Demon Slayer might not borrow Bleach's exact structure, it carries its essence, bringing the tone of Bleach into the next generation. At their core, Bleach, JJK, and Demon Slayer are built on a similar emotional DNA, a set of themes that transcends the plot and speaks to something universal. Let's start with grief. These stories don't begin with ambition or glory, they begin with loss. Ichigo loses his mother, Tanjiro loses his entire family, and Yuji loses his grandfather. And from that pain, they all step into responsibility far earlier than they should have. They don't chase power because they want to win, they chase it because someone they loved is already gone. Then there's the theme of mentorship, but not the clean heroic kind. These mentors are carrying their own scars, they've made mistakes, and in a way they represent something heavier than just wisdom. They're the embodiment of generational burden, the idea that power must be passed down because one day they won't be around to fight anymore. But perhaps the strongest thread across all three is the cost of power. Power isn't free in these worlds. It hurts to become strong, it changes you, it isolates you, and sometimes it turns you into the very thing you are fighting against. These stories understand something vital, that greatness doesn't come from talent or destiny, it comes from sacrifice, from choosing to keep going when it would be easier to just stop. So these stories aren't just about good versus evil, they're stories about grief, about carrying on when it's heavy, about legacy and pain, and how power always comes with a price. And that's what makes them timeless. Bleach didn't just influence anime, it rewired a way a whole generation told stories. Tight Kubo gave shounen a new language, one that blended myth with melancholy, identity with inheritance, action with afterlife. He showed how power could be tied to pain and how heroes could be haunted by what they carry. And this blueprint didn't vanish when Bleach ended, it evolved. evolved. JJK carries Bleach's torch with sharp modern clarity, refining Kubo's spiritual world building and building even darker, more internalized stakes, while Demon Slayer is quieter but just as powerful, internalizing the lessons of tragedy, structure, and redemption, and remixing them into a different tempo. Both are modern titans, both stand tall on their own, but neither would exist in their current form without Bleach. And in that sense, Ichigo's journey never really ended. It now echoes in the fists of Yuji Itadori and in the blades of Kamado Tanjiro, because Bleach didn't just fade into history, it became history itself, and through these successors, its soul lives on. And that's it for this week's video. Thank you so much for watching, and if you did enjoy it, feel free to like and subscribe. I'm gonna be posting weekly anime analysis content, so I hope to see you all next week.